Welcome, everybody. Just see who's in. Oh, we got a few in this morning. Good. Hopefully you can hear me all right and everything's coming through loud and clear. So we've got we're on to the final bits of the wrist and hand. It's been a long one. We've got this is the 6th session I think we've done on the wrist and the hand. So you can obviously see. Well, it start with the forearm muscles as well. So yeah, there is a heck of a lot to cover in this area. Morning, Neil. How you doing? Good to see you there, mate, as usual. We've got a few people who haven't been able to make it for a couple of weeks as well, so should hopefully see those in today. So if you haven't watched the last few sessions, this one might kind of blow your head off. Okay, so last week's one was a similar one as well. So it by all means join in and watch. That's okay. But if you're thinking, oh my god, I haven't got a clue what's going on, then just go back 5 weeks and start on the first one we did with the wrist and then build up there. Because if you have missed a few, then we're assuming some of the knowledge that you've got from the previous sessions. So yeah, so don't worry if you do feel a bit because you will if you haven't seen the other ones before. Cool. Right. Natalie's here. Yes, good. Natalie's here. It's been the first time for a while. I think Natalie's been able to make it. So welcome. I know we've got a few more like that as well. Hi, Julie. Good to see you again. Usual crew in. Cool. So just for those of you that don't know, some of the blimey, we are honoured. Danny's here. Yeah, made a live session. Brilliant. Thanks, Danny. For some of you that don't know, we teach a movement therapy diploma, and this forms part of the diploma learning. This is how we get our anatomy education across to our learners, and there's one of them. Okay, there's Penny. Morning. Look, wow. Do you know what's absolutely tipping it down in Birmingham today? I don't know what it's like at the moment because all the blinds are down, all the shutters are down, so we don't let any of the light in for the cameras. But yeah, hopefully it's nice when I finish. Yeah, so basically we've got a place to touch base with our learners every week, and just catch up through the anatomy. So if anybody's interested in doing the whole course, then just let us know. It is a monster. It takes about 3 years to complete, and there are 25 modules on it. So it's it's pretty in depth. Yeah, give us a shout if you want any more information on that. And then I didn't realise until I put the cameras on, but I'm wearing my old rock tape gear and was teaching this weekend for rock tape for the first time face to face in 2 years, something like that. So it was really good to get back to teaching again. So we're starting to run those courses now at Movement Therapy Education in Birmingham. Yeah, it's nice to actually see some faces and get hands on. So that's really good. Cool. Right, let's have a look at this. Flick onto our PowerPoint. So we're going to cover now the intrinsic muscles of the hand. So previously what we've looked at is all the muscles that kind of start in the forearm and then go down and influence the fingers. So the finger flexors, finger extensors, and then all of the thumb muscles, so the abductors, adductors, and extensors and flexors. So now we're going to have a look at the muscles of the hand. So the muscles that bring about these really key movements, which are the opposition type movements, which means that we can grip things. And obviously one of the differences between us and the ape world. Okay, so where that opposition and being able to pinch grip things is really, really important. So we're going to have a look at those today. Just switch to this one. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so these are the different regions of the hand. Just grab my arrow there. So some of you may have heard of these before, but we're going to go into them in quite some detail. So and also the structures around that go through these regions as well. So we've got the thenar eminence. You might have heard of that before, and that's basically your thumb pad. Okay, so that bit there, that's called your thenar eminence. We've already had a look at it on previous sessions, so we're not going to cover it today. But there's an area called the anatomical snuff box, which is that region just there by the thumb. Hold on. We have LearnAnatomy.Online and online. Proper Brummy that was, online. Royalty here. Good morgen. Good danke und dir. Good to see you, mate. Cool. So we've got anatomical snuff box region, which is that region, and we've talked about that a lot because it's an area where if you fracture your wrist, you usually fracture the bone that sits at the bottom of that anatomical snuff box. So again, if you've not heard of it, we have covered it on previous sessions. But your scaphoid bone forms the floor of that snuff box. Then we've got the hypothenar eminence, which is this bit. Okay, so it's all around the little finger side. So the bits that make up the kind of pads of your hand, you've got the thenar and the hypothenar eminence. Okay, so that's those bits. And then if I move me out of the way, whoop, there we go. And then we've also got the palmar and dorsal aspects of the hand. So the palmar is obviously the palm, and then the dorsum is the back of the hand, the dorsal part of the hand. So if you think about dorsal fin on a dolphin, it's on their back. The thoracics are called, used to be called years ago, the dorsal spine. So it's that on the back of the body is the dorsum or the dorsal surface. Okay, so these are the areas that we're going to have a look at in a bit more detail. So let's have a look at this one first. So we've got the thenar eminence. Just move me there. So the origin around the thenar eminence at the base of the thumb. So this kind of ties in all around this area here. It's the bit that's often a bit sore, especially if you do a lot of gripping in your work, or manual therapy is usually quite sore in these regions from gripping so much. Insertions are on the metacarpals proximal phalanx of the thumb, and we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail in a sec. And what the muscles do, a combination of muscles. So we've got up here the opponens pollicis. So opponens is opposition. So we've got a muscle that moves the thumb, the pollex, in opposition. Okay, we've got an adductor, so and that's part of that opposition movement as well. So it will adduct the thumb inwards. Okay, so from that position to that position. So that's adductor pollicis, abductor pollicis coming outwards. Okay, and then a flexor pollicis brevis. So we'll flex you. Okay, so a combination of all of those will help with opposition, okay, and getting your little finger to touch your thumb. So we're going to have a look at those in a bit more detail. Let's just switch to our video. Wrong videos. Get rid of that one. Here we go. Okay, so let's have a look. Just bring that one up. Right then, so let's just orientate you here. So what has happened, and again, we've seen bits of this before. Let me just bring me up there. Oh, there I am. My set up on the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so what we've seen before is all of the palmar aponeurosis, so all of the covering of the palm of the hand, and that's all been taken away on this one. So they take all the palmar aponeurosis away. They've taken away the flexor digitorum profundus and superficialis. Those have been taken away, and now these are really deep muscles in the hand. Okay, so that's where we are. That's obviously your thumb. And then your metacarpals will be under these muscles here. So let's have a look at this. Just pause that there a sec. Just move me there. So this is your adductor pollicis. Let's just put that there. So that muscle there, that's going to adduct your thumb, and it's got two heads to it. just go back a sec. Okay, so we got head 1 is a transverse head. So transverse means it goes across, and you'll see exactly where it attaches in a second. And then the second head is more of an oblique head, and it goes down. So there we go. Okay, so the head 1 transverse attaches onto that third metacarpal. Okay, so coming across onto the third metacarpal there. So obviously from there to there, if that muscle gets shorter, then it's going to bring the thumb across, and then just get that one right there. So quite a broad attachment there. And then the oblique head, because it comes obliquely down, this attaches on the base of the carpal tunnel. So the carpal tunnel sits here, and you've got loads of ligaments on the bottom of that carpal tunnel. So it attaches really deep into those ligaments. So all of the tendons, the median nerve will all be on top of these muscles. So these muscles are deep to those ones that we've looked at over the last couple of weeks. And then the attachment point is just up there, and there's a little sesamoid bone on the thumb, and sesamoid bones are really good for increasing leverage. So it's like your kneecap. Yeah, if your kneecap wasn't there and the tendons just went straight over your knee, when the quadriceps pull, you wouldn't generate much force. But because the kneecap is there, you're able to generate more force. And that's exactly the same with this bit in the thumb as well. So because of that sesamoid bone, it provides a lever for your adductor muscles to generate more force, so that you're able to grip things really, really tightly. Okay, obviously with some other muscles as well. So there's a little sesamoid there. So that's going to bring the thumb across. So that is your thenar eminence, which we were talking about before. So actually kind of thumb pad, and most people know that from massaging, yeah? So they're told to use that as a point of contact for massage. Okay, and then we're into the muscles that are deep to that, okay? So we've got your flexor pollicis brevis. So flexor will flex the thumb, so it'll bring it forward. Pollicis is thumb, and then brevis means short, okay? So remember the other ones that came from the forearm, they were longus. These ones are brevis, okay, because they're the intrinsic ones of the hand. So we've looked at all the long ones first, and now we're on to the short ones. So that's your flexor pollicis, abductor pollicis, and then just underneath that, you've got the opponens pollicis as well. Okay, these are the attachment points, and just pause that one there. So the abductor pollicis, oh, it came off, pause, go back there, try that again. So there we go. Okay, so you should know these from the very first one that we did. So remember, trapezium is under the thumb, trapezoid is just inside, doing in a Brummie accent. So adductor pollicis attaches onto the trapezium, so it's just underneath the thumb, and your origin insertion point just on the metacarpal phalangeal joint of the thumb. So just there. Flexor pollicis brevis, so the small flexor, that's on the trapezoid. Okay, so just inside. Oh, Siri's just joining in as well. And then another one just on top there. There we go. So both of the flexor pollicis brevis attaches all over that region there. So it's a real quite broad attachment on that trapezoid. And then they both attach up here on the thumb. So you can see with the adductor and the abductor and flexor, we've got some really, really short, powerful muscles that bring that thumb across. And if you think about the kind of things that we can grip and hold on to with those muscles, and then the pulley systems from the longer muscles as well, that's why our grip is where we are, how we are like we are. Yeah, so having all of those muscles means that we can make things and do things with our hands. So there's the opponens, so that's on the trapezium. And then even shorter, this one, so this is on the first metacarpal, and that one will bring the thumb across. Okay, cool. So those are all the muscles around that thenar eminence just there. Okay, and in terms of treatment, if you did need to treat this area, you wouldn't have a clue which muscle you're on. You know, they're all so tightly packed in, you just got no chance of being able to isolate any of them. In terms of assessments, again, it would be really, really difficult to assess any of those. Even when you're doing scanning of that area around the hand, it's really difficult to isolate muscles because there are so many muscles that do a very similar job. So they all kind of activate all together. So it's it's really, really difficult to analyze what's going on in that area unless you had something like an MRI if you needed to. Okay, so in terms of clinical testing, there isn't much that you can isolate within the hand. Okay, so just too many muscles around there. Cool. So that is all of those. Okay, so you've got your opponent's pellucis, adductor pellucis, abductor pellucis brevis, and then your flexor pellucis brevis as well. And all of these will be brevis. And brevis means short. Okay, so all of these muscles around here will be the short ones. Then we're on to the hypothenar eminence. So this is the bit on the little finger side, just here. Okay, so just on that region there. And one of the reasons to get to know the muscles first is because when we have a look at the blood supply and the nerve supply, they go through some of these muscles on their way to their various points. So understanding where those potential entrapment points are can be really useful, especially if people have got kind of neurological symptoms in their hand. So really useful to know the anatomy of the area for that region, for that reason. So on the little finger side, this is the hypothenar eminence, and that includes these muscles here. So we've got the opponens digiti minimi. Okay, so obviously the muscle that will work in opposition with the opponents for the thumb. The abductor digiti minimi, so a small abductor, and then flexor digiti minimi brevis, a small flexor of the digit. Okay, so let's have a look at those. Just get that there. Okay. So last time we had a look at the thenar, which is on the thumb side. So if you put your right hand up against the screen, that will orientate you with the image that you've got there. And then the left side is the one that we're going to have a look at now. So that's your little finger side. So let's go with that. Okay, so first one is that one. So the abductor digiti minimi. And if you have a look at the orientation of that muscle, so where it goes from there all the way down to here, it remember, muscles only pull, so the only thing it could do is take your little finger out to the side. Okay, so sometimes when you have a look at something, it's just obvious what it does, just because of the direction of pull. And then just underneath that, there we go, you've got the opponens digiti minimi, and look at that, that's an oblique muscle just there. Let's just go back a bit. So see the oblique nature of that one? Yeah, so if that can only pull, then the little finger is coming across. Yeah, it just has to, with the position of those muscles. Okay, so we're going to strip those away and have a look at the attachment points. So we've got the abductor attaches onto the pisiform. And if you remember this from the first couple of weeks, you've got that little pea-sized lump on the edge here, and that's where your abductor of your little finger will attach onto that point there. Okay, so just there, and then that attaches onto that MCP joint. Flexor is on the hamate. Okay, so with the hamate, we've talked about the hook of the hamate before. So there's a body of the hamate, and then there's a hook that goes over the top. So the flexor digiti minimi attaches onto the body of the hamate, and that's that point there, and goes up to pretty similar place to the abductor. Okay, so they're really, really close together, those two. And then again, that oblique one, that opponens. So if we have a look at that, so this is the hook of the hamate this attaches onto. Okay, and again, there's some other structures around there that are really important. So when we get onto the ulnar nerve, then you'll see the close relationship with all of these muscles and the nerve supply as well. But there is a really broad contact all on that metacarpal just there. Okay, so again, you got broad contact, small muscle, powerful muscle that will help to create that opposition movement so that you can grip. Okay, so again, another important muscle for us. And that's the two together. So there you go. So that bit there, this is what I was talking about before. Because the abductor attaches onto the pisiform, and then the flexor digiti attaches onto the hamate, the opponens onto the hook of the hamate, the ulnar nerve goes underneath the hook. So there's a little gap in the muscles just there. All right. And one of the major differences, mentioned this a few times with the median nerve and the ulnar nerve, is the median goes underneath the tunnel, the carpal tunnel. The ulnar goes over the top. But there is a little entrapment point here. Okay. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago. It's really common for your little finger and your ring finger to go numb if you're a cyclist and you put compression on that point there, because that is where your ulnar nerve goes through. So if you compress the nerve, it's called neuropraxia, and then you get tingling and numbness in your fingers. Okay, so this is why we've got on decent cycling gloves, you've got pads that create a little archway that provides some cushioning for that point in the wrist. Okay, so again, this is why you're not going to individually treat these muscles, but knowing where they go, you'll be able to work out then where the neuroanatomy goes, which will probably be more useful to you. So palmar and dorsal region, right? There are loads of little muscles in this bit of your hand. So we've got the thenar eminence just here, hypothenar just there, and then we've got all these little muscles in between. Okay, and all of these little muscles in between, they help with adduction and abduction movements, and they also help with flexion movements as well, and you'll see that in a second. So let's have a look at those. So the names of them, if you've not heard of them before, are here. So we've got the lumbrical muscles, and then we've got the palmar interossei, and then the dorsal interossei. So having a feel in between your metacarpal bones, that's where those muscles will be. So you've got the lumbricals and then the interossei, and they all kind of work together. Right? And you'll see, because the relationship is really quite close. So let's have a look at those. So this, hopefully, get rid of that one. There we go. So this one has had hypothenar and thenar eminence taken off. You've had all of the flexor digitorum superficialis and profundus taken off, the palmar aponeurosis taken off. So this is the last muscle layer before you get to the metacarpals. So really, really deep in the hand. All right, so these muscles are the most intrinsic muscles of the hand. So let's have a look at these. So these are the interosseous. All of them are interosseous. And there are 7 interosseous muscles altogether. So this is the dorsum. So there are 4 interossei muscles on the dorsum of the hand, okay, all around that region there. And they usually work in pairs, and you'll see that in a sec. And then we've got 3, obviously they can't work in pairs, 3 palmar on the palmar aspect. So what they're going to do is just isolate one, so that you can see what happens then to all of them. Okay, so they run either side of the metacarpal, up underneath that connective tissue where the long flexors go, and then they've got 2 tendons. So we've got a really short tendon. I'll show you this in a sec. So there's the short tendon, and that goes to your knuckle joint, so your MCP joint, if I just pause that there. So your short tendon is here, okay? And then your long tendon goes all the way up to the top of your finger. So you watch this one. So this then kind of twists around and then goes all the way to the end of your finger. So your interossei muscles start here, but they end up on the fingertips. And they work with some of the other muscles that we've already seen to bring about flexion in the fingers. And this next bit, this is an important bit. Okay, so I'm just going to pause that there. So on this model, so where the joint line is here, so that's the joint line. There's a little pin in the model, and then there's another pin there. So that's the center of that joint, and then another pin just there. And what you'll see is that the tendon from the interossei, they go in front of the first pin, so and they pass in front of the metacarpal phalangeal joint, so that's the knuckle, okay? And then as it goes up towards the proximal interphalangeal, it goes to the back of that joint. And the importance with that is that it will have a different influence on the movement of the fingers because of the position that it's in, okay? So I'm just going to play this through and you'll see it. So at the bottom it passes in front, and then at the top it passes behind. So then when the long tendon contracts, it does that. Okay, just move me out of the way. So because of the location of the tendons, when both of them contract together and they pull down, it means that they create a flexion force at the MCP joint, okay, because the line of pull is in front. And then because it goes behind the other two, it will extend those. So it keeps your finger straight as you're bending your finger, which is pretty mad. Yeah, so you've got both of them doing both that and that at the same time because of where it passes by on the joints. And this is the thing that fascinates me with the hand, the kind of intricacies of all of those movements and why you're able to be able to control things really, really closely, finite movements, and it's because of these intricacies. And then if you contract one at a time, then you'll get deviation. Okay, and they'll either deviate one way or the other depending on which one contracts. Yeah, so the interossei muscles, they're a lot bigger than you think. Yeah, so we think that they're kind of all around this area, but they go all the way to your fingertips. And then this is the first dorsal interosseous, so the first one on the back of the hand. Really, really meaty muscle on the back, and that's, you know, that point that everyone goes, oh yeah, pressing there, it's good for headaches. Okay, so it's that one on the back of the hand. Yeah, that's your first dorsal interosseous. And there's a little gap in there as well. And when we get to the blood supply, that is where your radial artery goes through. Okay, so when we have a look at the pathway of the blood supply, on the back of the hand, your radial artery will pass through into the palm via that little gap. Right, and it's very similar on everybody. It's there aren't that many variations. Okay, so this muscle is really important for something that we call key pinch. Okay, so you're able to bring your thumb across and use your thumb against your your index finger to create a really, really strong grip so that you can turn a key in a door. That's obviously why we were designed that way for turning keys. But that movement is really, really important and very, very powerful. Okay, so that key pinch grip is that first, well, amongst other things, that first dorsal interosseous muscle. Okay, cool. And then we are nearly there. Oh, I think that's, I thought we had one more. Let me just have a quick look, make sure I've done all my videos. Oh yeah, the lumbricals, yeah. So these are the intrinsic muscles of the hand as well. Here we go. So these are your lumbricals. Remember I said that the interossei and the lumbricals work together. Okay, they're very, very close to each other. So this is a view of a right hand again. So if you put your right hand up against the screen, these tendons, if you've not seen these before, we've done these a couple of weeks ago. These are flexor digitorum superficialis and flexor digitorum profundus. So we've got the deep flexors the long flexors of the finger, and we've also got the superficial flexors of the fingers as well. So the lumbricals are underneath those. All right, so let's have a look with those taken off. So if we move those out of the way, see they attach onto profundus, and then they come up just above the knuckle joint. So that's your MCP joint, metacarpal phalangeal joint. And then similar kind of positioning really to the interossei. Okay, so they're working with the interossei muscles, and if they both work, then they will help with extension, and if they one works, then it will be deviation. So again, similar to the interossei. There aren't very many things that those other than that those do. Okay, so literally that and a bit of that, and that's it. But the interossei ones, they're the ones that bring about the most kind of interesting movement, I think, with the fingers. So let's have a look. What time is it? Oh, we've got plenty of time. Okay, so we're going to have a look then at the blood supply for the arm, forearm, and the wrist. We've actually finally finished all of the muscles. Okay, and when now you know the muscles, well, have at least heard of them. Then when we come to do the nerve supply in a second, then you'll get a really good idea of where the nerve goes and why it innervates the things that it does, because it just basically is the on switch for all of the muscles that they pass by. So blood supply, then we're going to have a look at the superficial veins first. And then we'll have a look at the arteries. So we did this when we looked at the elbow. So we looked at the brachial artery, one of the main arteries coming up the inside of the arm, and then that splits into the radial and the ulnar arteries. Okay, so we're going to have a look at those, and you have probably heard of this one, the radial artery. The radial artery is on the thumb side of the hand, and people always used to struggle. I used to teach taking pulses in first aid about 20 years ago. Everybody struggled with it. But basically, if you flex your wrist forward, have a feel of all those flexors in the wrist, and then there's a little dip to the side of those. And if you put two fingers in there, that's where your radial artery is. Okay, so that's how to find it. Flex forward against a resistance. You'll feel all of the flexors. You come to the thumb side of those flexors, and then that's where your radial artery is. So why do we need to know that as doing therapy work? Well, if the whole hand is going numb, it could be that they've got a really bad problem with all of the nerves that supply the hand, or it could be a blood supply issue. So we can take the pulse and we can see what the pulse is like going to that region. And it's particularly important for thoracic outlet syndrome. So if you have an occlusion of the blood supply around the shoulder and the collarbone area, you can take the pulse, put the arm in different positions, and then if the pulse starts to drop, we know that we're getting a compression of the arteries that are coming through that area. So we need it for some diagnostics. Okay, so you can use it for that. And yeah, if their hand is going numb or really cold, then we want to know whether their blood supply is any good. Right, let's have a look at this. Just pause that one. Okay, so these are the superficial veins. Just get rid of that. Here we go. Okay, so what they've done with this model, and the reason why it looks like it does, is because they've injected blood here. So obviously there's a lot of blood in this region. It wouldn't normally look like that, but pushing the blood into there has then filled all of the other veins. Okay, so you'll be able to see these as we go down the arm. And we've looked at these when we did the elbow, or the origin of these when we did the elbow. So these are all the superficial drainage veins from the hand. And these are the ones that you can see on the surface of your skin. They're really, really superficial. all the way along the forearm, and these little joins there, let me just pause that there. Can you see all these little networks where they're all joining together? Yeah, so it's not like there's one big vein that kind of drains the whole lot. That the smaller veins will all it's called an anastomosis. So they will join together. They will anastomose so that they can share the distribution of the blood. So if there's a problem with one, then you'll have another way of getting rid of the blood flow. Okay, so again, a very nice, clever design. And then all of those veins then will meet up into the big ones. So the like the cephalic vein, see again, loads of tiny little veins, and then they come up into these big veins. So this is the basilic vein and the antecubital vein, which goes across. So the cephalic vein joins the basilic via that antecubital, and we looked at that when we did the elbow. Okay, and then that comes up underneath the in the armpit, and then drains into the superior vena cava. Yeah, and again, God, it seems like ages ago we did the heart. So you can now track the blood flow, the vein blood flow from the fingertips all the way up the arm, all the way back to the heart. Okay, so that vein loop is now complete, which is really cool. So you can kind of watch all those videos together now and piece it all together. And then the arteries, let's just show you this one. So this is the radial artery. So obviously on the thumb side, just to orientate you. So that this is a right arm again. That's the tendon of your biceps. Okay, so just to give you an idea. So you're in the crook of your elbow, just there. So there's the radial artery. So brachioradialis sits on top of it. Just move that out of the way. Pronator teres, superficialis, pollicis longus is all there. So you can see it running up, going towards that thumb. Okay, and then you see here where it splits. And this is the thumb side. So let me just pause that there. Okay, cool. So you can see here where it splits in two. So when you feel the pulse on the right hand, that's the right hand as you look at it, that's where it is. Yeah, it's right in there. So that's why doing the flex forward into that space, you pretty much find it every time. Okay, so that's your radial artery, and see how it comes through. Okay, so that's your abductor pollicis, what we talked about last week, extensor pollicis longus, and then these are the thumb muscles that we were just looking at, and that's where the radial artery goes through. So that's your first dorsal interossei. Take that away, and then your radial nerve goes through that gap. Okay, so if I just pause that there, let's just go back a bit. Okay, just pause there. Okay, so this is your thumb. We've got your extensor pollicis longus, which we looked at last week. This we just looked at in the hand, so that's that meaty one in your hand just there. So that's your first dorsal interosseous. And then remember, there was a little gap that the radial artery went through. Well, this is that gap. So I'm just going to pause that in places. Okay, so just through there. There we go. So that's your dorsal interosseous. And if we take that away, there's the artery. Okay, and we've got a couple of branches. So we've got branches that go towards the thumb and the muscles that supply the thenar eminence, and then the branches to the index finger as well, which will supply your lumbricals and your interossei muscles. And then it will also go through, which I think we'll see on the next video. Yeah, so it goes through to the palm. There you go. Okay, so it passes through to the palm. So let me just show you that. Okay, so this is it going through to the palm. This is a bit easier to see actually. So that's where we were before. So that's where the first interosseous will be. Thenar eminence. And now what you'll see is it popping through. There we go. So you can see it popping through into the front of the palm. Comes out into the palm there. And that, on that side, is your ulnar artery, which we'll have a look at in a second. So your radial artery will go, get the hand in the right place, we'll go, we'll split. okay, around here. So you'll get some going into the first part of the thumb there. Then it will split again around here. Some go into your finger, some go into your thumb. And then it will pass through there, come out in your palm, and then join with the ulnar artery on this side. Okay, so it forms a complete network of arterial supply for the hand. Yeah, so if there is a blockage on the radial side, the ulnar will still supply the blood to the hand, and vice versa. Okay, so it's got and you can, and again, these are the anastomoses that we were talking about. So these bridges between blood vessels. Okay. So this is really deep, deep into the hand. So that's the joining the ulnar artery, and that's called the deep palmar arch. Okay. And then we need to have a look at that ulnar artery and see the pathway of that one. So starting back at the elbow, bicep muscle again, that's your brachioradialis just there. So we're now going to follow the pathway of your ulnar artery, so little finger side this time. So there it is. Goes underneath pronator teres, so we're going to take those away. Move me out of the way. And it runs all the way along the ulnar aspect of the arm. So we've got the common interosseous artery, so it splits and then supplies the all of the interosseous region, so that where that interosseous membrane is, and there's a blood supply there from the ulnar artery. And then your flexor digitorum, it goes in between that, superficialis. So all the way down, and it pops out around about here. There we go. Yeah, so just in there, that's your ulnar artery all the way along there. So you've got flexor digitorum profundus and superficialis, so it will go in between those and just there. So this is why we tend to palpate the radial pulse rather than the ulnar pulse, because the ulnar pulse is really deep and there's quite a few structures in the way, whereas the radial side is really superficial. I mean, you saw on the image before, you could see just in that space just below the thumb, there wasn't much tissue on top of it, whereas there's quite a lot of tissue in the way. So there it is, deep there. So we've got flexor carpi ulnaris. And then again, it comes up through that tunnel underneath the flexor retinaculum, but it will go through the part of the flexor retinacula. Okay, so that there is a slight covering for the artery. Okay, so that's the radial, quite superficial, and you can see that quite easily. And then there's the ulnar, so it's hidden a bit, that one, so it's really difficult to palpate. So that's it coming out there. We've got a superficial branch that feeds the palm, and then a deep one that goes to all those hypothena muscles that we were just talking about. Peel back the palmar aponeurosis, and there's your superficial arch. Keep playing that. There we go. So this joins with the radial, as we said before. And you've got these digital arteries, and these are mad. So they will continue, go all the way right to the ends of your fingers. All the way through. There it is. And right to the tip of your finger. So you can see how small those blood vessels are. And this is one of the reasons why things like diabetes really affect your peripheral blood supply, because they are really, really tiny blood vessels. And especially in diabetes, you get loss of sensation in the fingers and the toes. And it's because of the size of the arteries. They're absolutely tiny. Okay, really, really small. Cool. Right. I think that might be enough for today. Okay, so we've covered a heck of a lot. So we've finished off the intrinsic hand muscles, and it's one of those where most of been stunned silence or something because we've had no questions. Uh, all of the intrinsic hand muscles, we've done all of the muscles of the hand and the wrist now. And we've also had a look at that blood supply. So coming from the ulnar side, which is the little finger side, and then the radial side, and how it splits and then supplies your palm and the back of your hand, and then all the way to your fingertips. Okay, so yeah, what we'll do next week, we'll have a look at the nerve supply, and I will link in some of the stuff we did with the shoulder and the elbow, and follow that flow of the nerve network all the way down to the fingers, so that it will help you if you do diagnostic work to work out the different tests to do at different areas of the body to work out whether it is blood or whether it's nerve that's causing the problem. And again, last week somebody said about is knowing your anatomy important for therapy? I think for manual therapy and massaging, not really. But if you want to do diagnostic work, then yeah, I think it's essential. I mean, knowing where the blood supply goes through, knowing that the on the nerve goes really near the hook of the hamate is I mean that's really important, because then you can start asking questions about any compression at that point. There's another point for the ulnar nerve around the elbow, so we'll have a look at that next week. Something called Osborne's ligament, so you can feel whether the ulnar nerve is flicking out of its groove. Maybe that's causing the symptoms. So yeah, for diagnostics, really, really important, I think. And hopefully you guys think so too. So we will see you next Monday to finally finish off the whole arm. Okay, so have a great week. And if you've got any questions, if you're watching this on catch up, just drop them in the group, and I'll get back to you during the week. Cool. See you guys.